The state of California is begging us to build walls in certain areas. They don't tell you that.
Whose streets?
Our streets!
Whose nation?
Our nation!
Rise up, stand up, protest, because hate must win.
President Trump in California tonight. His first visit to San Diego as Commander-in-Chief. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. President Trump lands in San Diego. This was his first visit to California since taking office last year. Air Force One touched down at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar around 11:30 this morning. And then President Trump headed to Otay Mesa to check out the border wall prototypes, where he had some choice words for California and her leaders.
Well, I think Governor Brown's done a very poor job running California. They have the highest taxes in the United States. The place is totally out of control. You have sanctuary cities where you have criminals living in the sanctuary cities. And then the mayor of Oakland goes out and notifies when ICE is going in to pick them up. And many of them were criminals with criminal records and very dangerous people, you would say dangerous people. And no, I think the governor's doing a terrible job running the state of California.
Governor Brown responded via Twitter, thanking the president for the shout out and reminding him the state has the 6th largest economy in the world. The president spoke more favorably about the border wall prototypes, noting they would be more difficult to climb than the fencing already in place. He also reiterated his support for building a new wall.
If you don't have a wall system, we're not going to have a country.
San Diego is the largest city on the U.S.-Mexico border to formally oppose the president's proposed wall. Before leaving San Diego, President Trump spoke to Marines at Miramar. He promised security and support to service members. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy has the story.
3,000 service members waved flags and cheered as they welcomed their commander-in-chief to their home base at MCAS Miramar.
Home of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing and the mighty Miramar Marines. Thank you very much. This is beautiful.
President Trump delivered a message of the importance of resiliency and security, vowing to undertake the largest military buildup in 3 decades.
You have fewer ships than we should, fewer planes than we should, and you have fewer of you than we should. Today, I am very pleased to report that all of that is changing, and all of that, as you have seen, is changing quickly.
He rallied the troops. Most are part of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, deploying regularly to provide air support in the Middle East and Asia Pacific. His message to the pilots: you could use some new fighter jets.
I'm happy to report that in the near future, Miramar is getting brand new CH-53K King Stallions, the big ones you're getting. They'll be sent soon. They're coming.
And he promised to invest in service members, too.
In 2019, we want to give you your largest pay raise in over a decade. You deserve it. You deserve it.
He touted increased space exploration and shared a new idea.
We're doing a tremendous amount of work in space. I said, maybe we need a new force. We'll call it the Space Force. And I was not really serious. And then I said, what a great idea. Maybe we'll have to do that.
While he focused on a military buildup, he also called for an increase in homeland security and protecting Americans from drugs, gang activity, and terrorism.
So to the fighting men and women of Miramar and all across the San Diego area, we must all think bigger, build faster, push farther, dare higher, and be greater than ever, ever, ever before.
After his brief remarks to the troops, he headed on to Los Angeles for a campaign fundraiser.
And God bless America. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Reporting from Miramar, Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
People who oppose President Trump and his wall held protest in San Ysidro. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero was there with the message they wanted to send to the head of state.
I'm here at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in San Ysidro, where over 100 people have gathered to protest President Trump's visit to San Diego today. Earlier, I was at the San Ysidro Port of Entry, where people gathered to protest as well.
No hate, no fear. Immigrants are welcome here.
The protest started near the border crossing where people enter the U.S. from Mexico in San Ysidro.
This is actually one of my favorite things.
San Diego resident Rebecca Montes was carrying a sign that said, "Brown and Proud." She says Trump's wall and immigration policies promote racism against people of color, and that she wants to send him a message.
I would want to tell him, look at what you're doing, look at what you're trying to destroy. Why? What is the point of it? To have a bland, boring America with no culture, no diversity, no people. Every single person brings something different, and you want to take that away.
But America is multicultural.
Another person at the protest was Will Johnson, who runs the San Diego Protest Facebook page.
We want to take the narrative away from Donald Trump. Donald Trump's coming to essentially do the season finale of his reality show. He's picking the winner with the wall that he wants, and we're trying to take that narrative away from him. We want to talk about the real impact that this border has on our communities.
The protesters say Trump's promised wall is needlessly expensive and ineffective, rerouting smuggling into the ocean, underground into tunnels, and into the desert, where people die by the hundreds each year.
Immigrants are welcome here.
The protesters say they hope their message reaches President Trump. Reporting from San Ysidro, Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
About 200 pro-Trump people rallied in Otay Mesa, all hoping for a glimpse of the president and his motorcade. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says they're excited about his border wall project.
American flags were on prominent display at the rally in an Otay Mesa Industrial Park. San Diego Patriots organizer Amy Sutton was happy to see so many people gathering to publicly show their support for the 45th president.
We have organized this rally to support President Trump coming here and making a final decision on the final phases of the border wall prototypes. And we want to show him that Californians and people throughout the country have come here to this specific rally to see President Trump and to support him.
Sutton says she was happy the crowd was both large and well-behaved, but the rally also featured the vitriol that was the hallmark of the Trump campaign.
Build that wall, 10 feet, 20 feet, 100 feet tall.
Former California Assemblymember Tim Donnelly lashed out at those who've resisted the Trump administration's harsh approach to immigration.
I've been praying for federal agents to arrest Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf. For aiding and abetting criminal aliens in our country.
Lock her up. Lock her up.
Lock her up. I agree.
Lock her up. Lock her up.
Politics ignited the crowd's passions, but many were here for the same reason the president came. Temecula resident Lori LeClaire says she's ready to see the new border wall get built.
Mainly to keep the criminals out and to have people go through the legal process of coming into our country to become a citizen.
There was hope the president's motorcade might drive by at some point. For most people that came to this rally, it was a chance to be with people who share their political viewpoint. In Otay Mesa, Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
President Trump says building the wall is important to stop the flow of illegal drugs and crime across the border.
If you don't have a wall system, we're not going to have a country. There's a lot of problems in Mexico. They have a lot of problems over there. And they have the cartels. And the cartels, we're fighting the cartels, and we're fighting them hard. Nobody ever fought them like we fought them. I mean, we fight them hard. But the fact is, if you don't have a wall system, it would be bedlam, I imagine.
To find out if that theory pans out, I spoke with USD professor David Shirk. He's director of the Justice in Mexico program, which looks at crime and justice in Mexico. Dr. Shirk, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So how might a more secure border impact the crossing of people and drugs illegally?
So what we've seen over the last 15, 20 years is we've seen a hardening of the border, increased enforcement, increased in personnel, more money and cameras coming to the border to control the area, is an actual increase in operational control for Border Patrol agents that are working on the scene. It allows them to respond more quickly when they see something happening along the border, and it actually increases the safety of the individual agents because the area is more secure. But the problem is that the overall or net effect on migration is not very large, because immigration, like drugs, is not a problem that starts at the border. It's not a problem that we can then necessarily stop at the border. We need to address the issues that cause a demand for Mexican labor, such as problems back in home communities, and also employers who hire under the table here in the United States.
And we already have a barrier, a physical barrier between U.S. and Mexico, but what's the connection, if any, between gaps in that barrier and the drug trade?
So, the drug trade is basically, or at least in Mexico, comprises highly sophisticated organizations that will move their product into the United States by any means possible. There is a fair amount of drugs that moves into the country in areas that are not currently walled off or fenced off. But a large amount also moves through legal ports of entry, in smuggled compartments, and through other means, including tunnels that go under the border, aerolite vehicles that fly over the border, and even maritime entry into the United States. So what is likely to happen, in my view, is that the harder we make it to get across the border, the more sophisticated organized crime groups will become. And ironically, we'll see even more powerful criminal organizations form, as we have in the last 15, 20 years, as we've made it harder across the border.
In recent years, what has been the impact of more security along the U.S.-Mexico border, particularly here in San Diego?
So on the immigration issue, what it has done is to make it more difficult for individuals to get into the border. And so they have had to rely more heavily on either professional smugglers, coyotes, these are people who are being paid $1,500, $3,000 to smuggle them into the country, often in large groups, sometimes smuggled in very dangerous conditions, in closed containers in trucks. And that increase in reliance on professional smugglers has exposed those people to much more risk, rape, being robbed, being abandoned in desert areas. So we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of people who die crossing the border in those circumstances, or people who can't afford those smugglers and wind up crossing in desert areas where they might die of exposure to the elements, either extreme heat or extreme cold. So we've essentially made it more difficult and more risky and more dangerous for migrants, but we haven't changed the base incentives that migrants have to come to this country in search of jobs. And so it is unfortunate that the flows continue to come. They're just rediverted to more dangerous and difficult areas of crossing.
Dr. Shirk, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
President Trump campaigned on a promise to build a wall separating the U.S. and Mexico. Today, he reviewed the first phase of that by visiting the prototypes. But there's already a border barrier here in San Diego.
So that's 95% with a scrap metal wall that they just put together with excess material. And it worked 95%. And that wall they can get over very easily. These walls they can't.
In a collaboration last fall, KPBS and iNewsSource took an in-depth look at that existing wall. And I spoke earlier with one of the contributors, iNewsSource reporter Leonardo Castaneda. So Leonardo, can you briefly describe the America's Wall project?
Yeah, so with KPBS and iNewsSource, we wanted to take a look and really understand what's going on at the border, what is there, what structures are there, as we talk about potentially expanding or rebuilding some of that wall.
And how long is the U.S.-Mexico border, and how much of that is already fenced?
So the border is about 1,954 miles long. There's about 653 miles of fencing, across it, and then that includes an additional 37 miles of secondary fencing, so kind of backup wall behind the main wall. And most of that is in California, Arizona, New Mexico. Those states are very heavily fortified. And then Texas, which is the longest state, has the longest border with Mexico, has the fewest miles.
So there's a lot of conversation about the need for more of a wall, more of a fence, more of a barrier. But then you speak about this fencing that already exists. So when was this constructed and who authorized it?
Yeah, most of what's there, about 90% of it was built in the last 13 years. So it was voted on and authorized. It's a huge expansion under George W. Bush, and his administration started building a lot of the fencing, and then it was kind of finished by President Barack Obama. 2009, 2010 was the last couple of years where we had a big construction spurt. So it was a bit of a bipartisan project to build what's there today.
And during this collaborative effort, what was the most surprising part for you?
I think what was really surprising is that we saw that the fence had been fairly effective in kind of rerouting people. So it maybe didn't always decrease the overall illegal entry into the country, but when the fencing came up in San Diego or El Paso or in Arizona, we saw that migrants found other ways to enter the country. They moved further east to Texas, where it's most of the entries going on right now, or they started using tunnels and drones to smuggle particularly drugs that are more valuable. So people reacted fairly quickly, and it did cut down the migration, the illegal entry, for example, in San Diego.
Very interesting, Leonardo. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
President Trump's next stop is Beverly Hills for a Republican fundraiser. Our coverage continues on his California trip, on air and online at kpbs.org. The proposed Broadcom takeover of Qualcomm is off. President Trump has blocked the Singapore-based company's plans, citing national security concerns. KPBS reporter Jade Hindman has the latest.
Well, from Mayor Kevin Faulconer to Chuck Schumer, Donald Trump is getting positive feedback on his order to stop the proposed purchase of Qualcomm by Broadcom. It was recommended after a federal investigation into concerns that Broadcom could be working with a foreign interest. In a statement, Broadcom said it strongly disagrees that its proposed acquisition of Qualcomm raises any national security concerns. But here's some insight on what some of those national security concerns may be.
They have blocked several other Chinese-related takeovers, and I think that's what they felt here. They were a little bit uncomfortable with Broadcom's relationship to certain Chinese companies. There's a little bit of a race to develop 5G, leading technology. A lot of that leading technology is used by the military.
Well, as part of Trump's order, candidates chosen by Broadcom to sit on Qualcomm's board of directors will be disqualified when Qualcomm stockholders meet to vote on a new board. The meeting of Qualcomm stockholders is now set for March 23rd. Jade Hindman, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump fires Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. What it says about the president and the United States' role in the world. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Clouds are rolling in, and we're expecting showers as early as tonight. Regina Miller has tonight's forecast.
Well, we do have moisture in place, clouds around, a couple of spotty showers, and with a disturbance riding in here from the north, we're going to see a couple of spotty showers around for tonight as well. Our overnight low is 61 degrees. For tonight in San Diego County, we've got some of those showers around, especially as you go farther northward. That's where we'll see more frequent showers here and maybe even some steadier rain as you head farther to the north there. As we go through your Wednesday, staying unsettled, a morning shower in places. Otherwise, we have a mostly cloudy sky. So in San Diego, 66 degrees for your daytime high. Ramona checking in at 61. We'll have a partly to mostly cloudy sky in areas. So mostly cloudy along the coast. So tonight into tomorrow morning, there still could be a lingering shower in the morning. And then for Thursday, a morning shower again, as we could see some Wednesday night showers, and that could linger into Thursday morning. A shower in spots on Friday, and then more in the way of spotty showers around for Sunday, or Saturday, I should say. On Wednesday, inland locations, mostly cloudy, 64 degrees. There could be some showers around Wednesday night and lingering into Thursday morning. A shower in spots on Friday, spotty showers on Saturday as well. As we get into the mountain areas, cooler on Wednesday and mostly cloudy, 47 degrees. On Thursday, a snow shower at 42. We've got snow at times on Friday, 41 degrees, and then some showers around, and cold on Saturday at 37 degrees. In the desert locations, not as warm, 73, partly sunny and cool for your Thursday. Friday, we could see a shower around as well with a temperature of 70 degrees, 67 degrees, and cool on Saturday with a mostly cloudy sky. Ebony, back to you.
The Navy is eliminating Combat Camera, a group of photographers and videographers who shoot in dangerous situations. The move saves the Pentagon money, but ends a unit with a history that goes back to the war in the Pacific. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh talked to the last crew in San Diego.
Kind of a I or me book.
Kurt Kinnaman joined Navy Combat Camera in 1958 and retired in 1985. He still works as a volunteer at the West Coast Unit on Naval Air Station North Island. They dedicated the building to him in October, but his unit is about to go away.
I thought it was BS. I mean, you know.
As he thumbs through his scrapbook, Kinnaman remembers setting up a photo lab in Saigon during the Vietnam War. Other photographers of his generation waded through the jungle with the Marines. Anonymous cameramen capturing history.
It's mostly documentary. Complete the job and have it satisfy whomever it was made for. Okay, that's a reward in itself.
For week after vicious week, the most devastating air-sea battle of all time wore on. The Japanese paid with their Air Force.
This kind of dangerous, in-your-face shooting made Combat Camera famous in World War II. Their footage made it into Hollywood films like this one from the Battle of Okinawa.
There was no retreat.
Images are used for training and PR, though they see themselves mainly as documenting naval history.
When you look at the history of the accomplishments of the things that we've achieved over the years.
Doug Hauser is still trying to wrap his head around being the last commander for Naval Combat Camera. Last year, the Navy cut the budget by 60%. They weren't surprised when the Navy announced that they will end Combat Camera effective October 1st.
I like to look at some of the old images and the things, and because there's a story behind each photographer that took that image.
Each service has its own combat camera. The Army, Air Force, and Marines are keeping theirs. The Navy stations a unit at Norfolk, Virginia, the other in San Diego.
This is actually some of our what we consider our legacy.
Fleet Combat Camera, with its motto, "We will shoot you," works mainly on board ships and with divers in the Pacific.
Underwater camera here as well, whereas back in the day the camera itself was watertight.
Combat Camera's final budget was $2.5 million, a drop in the bucket for the Navy.
The glass that comes with them these days, or back then, was really state of the art.
A Pentagon spokesperson says the Navy wants to increase efficiency. Navy Public Affairs will continue to shoot events. Some sailors will be asked to record themselves with GoPros. Hauser says what the Navy loses are sailors trained to embed with units, like when NASA recently asked them to document tests of its Orion spacecraft in the waters off of Southern California.
And they came to us looking for the high-end photographer that can get out there and embed with the folks that are on those rib boats. That's what sets us apart. We become part of that evolution. We become part of what they're trying to achieve in the mission.
Arthur Gwaine Marquez is one of Combat Camera's few remaining divers. He assembles his underwater camera in the dive locker in San Diego while contemplating the future.
I mean, it's not good. A lot of people hit me up asking, how do I become an underwater photographer? And it's, I tell them like our training pipelines and everything, but unfortunately with the close down of the command, it's not going to be a thing anymore.
The Pentagon says over the next several months they'll decide the skills the Navy will need to keep. San Diego ran a quick shot training school so photographers can learn to fight as they film, so they can work with units like the SEALs.
Our guys get the best equipment.
Ted Banks is retired from the Navy. He handles the equipment for Combat Camera.
They know our background. They know our history. They basically trust us. We've kind of earned the right to be there with them on the ground.
Banks says the Navy will have to decide what to do with the boxes of cameras, lenses, and spare batteries. The Navy concedes some of this documentary work might have to be contracted out, though they say combat cameras' role in Navy history is over. In San Diego, I'm Steve Walsh.
Now, recapping our top story, President Donald Trump will spend the night in Los Angeles after a stop in San Diego. The president met with Congressman Duncan Hunter and others in Otay Mesa, where he viewed prototypes for the border wall. He then spoke to Marines at MCAS Miramar about the project.
I've just come from a trip to the border, where I met with our wonderful border agents, Border Patrol and the ICE agents, unbelievable people, and reviewed prototypes of a new physical wall that will protect our border and protect our country.
Congressman Darrell Issa greeted the president before his speech. This is President Trump's first visit to California while in office. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.